And I'll give you an example. In 1938, Franklin Delano Roosevelt sent a message to Congress asking them to pass a commission to investigate abuses of concentrated corporate power, which they did. In his message, he said, when government is controlled by private economic power, that is fascism. That's Franklin Delano Roosevelt. It is so much worse today that one reason why I'm running for president on an independent ticket with Matt Gonzalez, a leading civil rights lawyer and former elected member of the San Francisco City Council, as my vice presidential running mate, is that you can't get anything done to improve your country in Washington, D.C. You cannot have a chance to be heard. Nobody's asking the government to rubber stamp whatever we propose. But in the 60s and 70s, we got congressional hearings. Corporate executives were hauled up and interrogated like auto executives, drug executives. We got regulatory agencies to respond to our petitions to improve your health and safety and economic well-being. You can't do that anymore. So what are those citizen groups that you send contributions to? What are they doing in Washington? What can they do? Just twiddle their thumbs? Pick up the crumbs from the table? Block a waiver here from an environmental rule and lose 10 waivers in the process? We have to get serious. If we don't get serious for our children and grandchildren, we have to get serious for our own self-respect. An economy that has enriched the top 1% of people in this country and that has driven backward 80% of the people are losing ground. Household incomes down. The peak wage year adjusted for inflation in our country is 1973. But the economy has grown, and it's grown. But who has raked off the gains? The top 5%, the top 1%. And if you looked at the figures of the top 0.1% and the New York Times Pulitzer Prize winning reporter David K. Johnston's book, Free Lunch, it'll stagger your imagination. Free lunch refers to how corporate interests and their executives rip off Uncle Sam with subsidies, handouts, giveaways, tax loopholes, tax shelters in order to enrich themselves while they're stomping on the workers beneath them. 65,000 people die every year from air pollution. The EPA is hardly given adequate resources and is being sabotaged by the White House and the polluters. Who's saying no? The polluters, the big coal companies, and the coal electric generating plants that use coal that are responsible for almost half of that death toll. What are all these statistics? Are they pitiless abstractions? The country's been turned upside down after 9/11. Trillions of dollars have been spent. We've been turned into a garrison state. Our civil liberties are compromised. Our federal budgets are grossly distorted for the Halliburtons and the Blackwaters and other corporations who are stealing the taxpayers day by day, even though they're subject to Pentagon audits which never go anywhere. And yet we have all of these morbidity and mortality figures that represent preventable deaths and injuries. Oh, the figures in the hospital area are terrible. 200 to 250 people die every day in hospitals from hospital-induced infections. Centers for Disease Control. Harvard School of Public Health. Over 80,000 people die every year in hospitals from medical negligence. Over 100,000 people die from misprescription of drugs. And yet, it's business as usual for the Republican and Democratic parties. On our website, votenader.org, to clarify the bright line between the Nader Gonzalez agenda, we've just started. The first 12, there'll be many more. On the table for us, but off the table for McCain, Obama, and Clinton, are single-payer national health insurance. Off the table for the three major candidates are cutting the bloated, wasteful military budget. None of them will oppose the resurgence of government-guaranteed nuclear power, your guarantee, your taxpayer guarantee. They've already passed $19 billion in loan guarantees for new nuclear power plants because it can't meet the test of private financing. Wall Street will not lend electric utilities money to build a nuclear plant unless it gets a 100% Uncle Sam guarantee. They rejected a 90% loan guarantee. Off the table, aggressive crackdown on corporate crime and corporate welfare for the three major candidates. That's on the table for Nader Gonzalez. Opening up the presidential debates, which is a hoked up corporation created by the two parties to make sure no one else gets on, and to make sure that debates are rationed. Why do we ration presidential debates? Do we ration weather reports? Do we ration entertainment? Do we ration sports? What is this 2 or 3 debates after Labor Day? And they're really not debates, they're parallel interviews. On the table for Nader Gonzalez is a carbon tax and a tax on pollution. Why don't we tax the things we like the least first? Why don't we tax the things we dislike the most first, before we tax human labor, before we tax necessities in the stores, like sales tax on clothing and appliances and medicines and in some states food? We should tax things we like the least or dislike the most, like tax pollution, carbon tax, tax the addictive industries more than they're already taxed, tax corporate crime, hefty penalties, tax, above all, securities derivative speculation. Last year, $470 trillion in security derivatives, credit swaps and all the rest of it, pure speculation, was transacted. What if we had part of 1% tax on that? And we should, because wild, unbridled speculation in Wall Street has now forced the Federal Reserve to bail these speculators out, to increase the risk on the taxpayer. And the whole thing is now destabilizing the economy, starting with the subprime mortgage racket. It used to be that when you wanted to buy a home in the old days, and you lived on Elm Street, you got a mortgage from the Savings and Loan down on Main Street. And that's where they stayed. That was the relationship, monthly payments. Now, it's quite different. Now you have these mortgages bundled in very complex bundles and sold and resold and resold, so that the homeowner on Elm Street may not know who holds the mortgage. Or it may be someone in Seattle instead of Harrisburg or Philadelphia. And each time they sell off, it becomes more abstract, more risky, and then they go to Washington for a bailout. I think there should be a debate at the presidential level in this country about why we don't move the burden of our tax system to things we like the least and dislike the most, so we can free human labor from any federal income taxation.